The Untold History, a podcast by the Hispanic Council, with the collaboration of the Spanish Ministry of Defense, to get to know great Spanish figures in the history of the United States. Today, Alonso Álvarez de Pineda. The discovery of the New World worked as a powerful magnet for countless Spaniards who, from a very young age, sailed toward the new lands looking for fortune, opportunities, glory, and fame. This was the case of Alonso Álvarez de Pineda, who, still green, headed to Seville, a hotbed of trade with the Indies. From there, he set course for the West, looking toward the new life promised by those newfound places. Alonso had left his native town, Aldea Centenera, in the province of Cáceres in 1516, being almost 20 years old and accompanied by his mother. A few years later, his reputation as an excellent sailor placed him under the command of the governor of Jamaica, Francisco de Garay, who entrusted him in 1519 the mission that would make him the author of the first cartography of the Gulf of Mexico. The governor completely confided in the legends that spoke of the mythical and coveted Strait of Amiens, which supposedly provided a direct route to the East Indies without the need of skirting the American continent. Garay also intended to explore the legendary lands that apparently laid in the northwest of Cuba and Jamaica. So, he put a generous and well-equipped fleet at Alonso's disposal, 4 ships and 270 men. At only 25, Alonso was responsible for one of the largest expeditions ever taken, although this was not surprising, since despite his youth, his skills as a pilot, cartographer, and commander had already been proven for a long time. Florida had already been discovered in 1513 by Ponce de Leon. Considering this information, he decided to start the expedition from those lands. When they reached Los Cayos, turned west, and exploring the western part, they figured out that Florida was not an island, as Ponce had thought, but a peninsula. Following the coast, Pineda and his men arrived at present-day Mobile and were impressed to see the mouth of a gigantic waterway they called the River of the Holy Spirit, which today we know as the Mississippi, and whose marvelous delta they had just discovered. He continued along the shores of the current states of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, and arrived at the Corpus Christi Bay, named after the Corpus Christi Day on which it was discovered. There, he founded the city of Corpus Christi as well, and both city and bay were ceremoniously confirmed as territories of the King of Spain. Over time, that small and first European settlement in Texas grew and became an important supply port for the ships that sailed the bay's waters. After laying the foundations of Corpus Christi and establishing a garrison that consisted of a few men and a few cannons, Alonso continued his voyage. Throughout this voyage, he charted 800 miles of the Gulf of Mexico's coast, creating the first map of the area, which he called Amiquel's Land. He had noted a gigantic continental territory that stretched to the north and west of the Antilles, and whose profile was beginning to show up in the sketches made after only 9 months of navigation. When the Mayflower's crew kissed the earth of New England, thanking God for allowing them to arrive safe and sound, they were unknowingly mimicking the prayers that had been said in Spanish for a century throughout the south of the continent, that Alonso Álvarez de Pineda had first drawn black on white. Based on Pineda's reconnaissance in 1521, Governor Francisco de Garay was authorized by the Spanish crown to begin the colonization of the territory. Alonso had accomplished part of his mission, exploring and mapping new lands, but he had not found the longed-for and non-existent passage to the west, so he headed south and arrived at Veracruz in August. There, Hernan Cortés's expedition had just arrived, fleeing from the governor of Cuba, and was ready to begin conquering the Aztec Empire. Pineda was told to intercept it and take the territory in Garay's name. But Cortés had already founded a colony there to serve as a base for his conquest, and as an administrative title to claim his estate. That is why he showed no disposition at all to obey any of the governor's orders transmitted by Pineda. As soon as Pineda's men disembarked, Cortés's men captured most of them, although Pineda and some of his most faithful men managed to escape and sail up the Gulf of Mexico, this time northeast, back to Jamaica. It took them 40 days until they reached the mouth of a new river, which he named Rio de las Palmas, and which today the Mexicans call Rio Bravo, while the Americans call it Rio Grande. In need of repairs to his ships, he remained there for some time, during which he went upstream and documented the existence of at least 40 different tribes in a stretch of about 50 kilometers inland. Shortly after his return to Jamaica, he set sail again, this time for Mexico, where he founded a colony in the Panuco region near the present city of Tampico. It was there where his life, that was as short as it was intense, ended, with an assault on the settlement by the Huastec Indians. In January 1520, the village was rescued by Diego de Camargo, who found it under siege, and who managed to evacuate 60 of its inhabitants, among whom neither Alonso nor his mother, who had already perished, could be counted. This Spaniard, extraordinary but consigned to oblivion nowadays, has a beautiful statue in the city of Corpus Christi, and it is part of all the historical reference guides, both in Texas and the United States. There, he is remembered as the man who, always in the company of his mother, Doña Nina, brought Spain to Texas and drew its coastal contour.